You know that feeling when you're driving down a dark, winding road in the dead of winter, the heater is blasting, the radio is playing, you feel totally secure.
And then out of nowhere, you hit a patch of black ice.
Exactly. The steering wheel just goes completely dead in your hands. You are still moving fast, but you have absolutely zero control over where you are going.
It is terrifying.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that feeling of helpless, terrifying momentum, that is exactly what it feels like to get into a heated argument with someone when you are communicating in a second language. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We are jumping straight into a fascinating course today. We are looking at the Midnight English Guide, specifically their deep dive on conflict resolution and emotional intelligence, but tailored for non-native speakers.
Right, which is such a unique angle.
Yeah, and our mission today is to extract the exact language chunks, the specific psychological frameworks you need to stop an argument from spiraling. We are going to look at how to validate the other person and how to deliver what the guide calls a high-value apology.
And we really need to emphasize right up front that this is not a lesson on how to avoid conflict.
No, definitely not.
Because avoidance just breeds resentment over time. The goal here is to master conflict. The guide argues that handling the heat intelligently doesn't just, save a relationship. It actually increases your value in the eyes of the other person.
It strengthens the bond.
Exactly. Makes the connection stronger than it was before the fight.
The stakes here are incredibly high for you listening right now. Whether you are navigating a romantic relationship or trying to maintain a deep friendship or even dealing with a high-stakes workplace conflict in a second language.
Yes, especially at work.
Right. Lacking the nuanced vocabulary to express your complex feelings, it can lead to permanent damage. One wrong turn of the wheel and the car crashes. So let's look at the root cause of why these linguistic arguments go so wrong so fast.
It really starts with the sheer frustration of the language barrier itself. Think about the cognitive load of just speaking a second language on a normal, relaxed day. It takes mental energy.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, introduce the stress of an argument. Neurologically, when we get angry, we experience something called an amygdala hijack.
The emotional brain takes over.
Precisely. The emotional center of our brain takes the wheel, and the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic and complex vocabulary, it essentially just shuts down.
Wow.
So when you combine that biological reality with a language barrier, you feel incredibly trapped. You have these complex, swirling emotions, but you only have access to blunt instruments.
And when people feel trapped and misunderstood like that, they usually resort to one of two highly toxic behaviors.
Right.
They either completely shut down and refuse to speak, they give you the silent treatment, which is just agonizing.
It is the worst.
Or, on the flip side, they swing that blunt linguistic instrument. They use simple, harsh words that cut far deeper than they actually intended.
Which brings us to perhaps the most dangerous blunt instrument in the entire English language.
Oh, I know what you were going to say.
When someone feels overwhelmed by their partner's or their colleagues' emotions, their instinct is often to look at them and just say, "You need to calm down."
Or you are overreacting.
Yes, you are overreacting.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the source material uses a brilliant analogy here. Saying, calm down to an angry person is literally like throwing gasoline on a fire. You think you are using water, but you are causing a massive explosion.
A total detonation.
Right. So why is that phrase so universally triggering?
Because it is the ultimate form of invalidation. Listen to what you are actually saying. When you tell someone to calm down, you are not just asking for a lower volume. You are telling them that their reality is wrong. You are implying that their anger is unjustified. And by extension, that they are acting crazy or irrational. It is an incredibly condescending command.
And it immediately makes them infinitely angrier. So the guide offers a highly specific solution to this, which they call the same team pivot. The idea is that you have to mentally shift the entire dynamic in the room. You have to move it from you versus me to us versus the problem.
Yes.
And the first language chunk they give us acts as a circuit breaker. You look at the person, firmly but softly, and you say, "We are on the same team."
We are on the same team. That phrase is pure psychological judo.
I love that. Psychological judo.
It really is. You see, when arguments get loud and personal, our defensive walls shoot right up. Evolutionarily, we start viewing the person sitting across from us as a literal threat.
Right, the fight or flight response.
Exactly. So by stating calmly, we are on the same team, you interrupt that primal response. You remind their nervous system that you are safe,
Yeah.
that you are not the enemy.
And once you lower those walls, instead of telling them to calm down, you use the second key chunk. You say, let's take a breath.
Yes. Let us take a breath.
Now, I want to dig into the mechanics of this with you. Why is the phrasing of let's take a breath so much more effective than telling someone to relax or calm down? What is the actual physiological and psychological difference happening in that exact moment?
Well, what's fascinating here is how it targets both the mind and the body simultaneously. Let's start with the physiology.
Okay.
When someone is furious, their heart rate is elevated, their cortisol levels are spiking, breathing becomes very shallow. So when you invite them to take a breath and you actually take a deep breath with them, you are physically forcing their parasympathetic nervous system to engage.
Oh, wow.
A deep, shared breath literally lowers the heart rate. It clears the cortisol right out of the bloodstream.
It's like a biological reset button.
It is a reset button.
Yeah.
And psychologically, listen to the subtle power dynamic in the phrasing. Let us take a breath.
Let it.
It includes you. It signals that the situation itself is heated, not that the other person is broken or out of control. It brings both of you together into a cooperative pause. You are sharing the burden of the tension, rather than, pointing a finger from a pedestal of rationality.
Okay, so the same team pivot worked. You hit the brakes, the shouting has stopped, and you've taken that cooperative breath. But the car is still sitting on the black ice.
The danger hasn't passed.
Right. The anger hasn't vanished. And now they are going to list off exactly why they're hurt and everything you did wrong. How do you respond to those grievances without instantly getting defensive and just restarting the fight?
This is where most well-intentioned people step right into a massive trap. They try to explain themselves.
Or yes, but trap.
The yes, but trap.
We have all done this, usually without even realizing it. They say, I was really hurt when you didn't support me in that meeting. And the instinct is to immediately reply, yes, but I only did it because the boss was watching.
Or, yes, but you didn't support me last week.
Exactly. It's like you are building this beautiful bridge of validation with the word yes. And the word but is a stick of dynamite that blows the entire bridge to pieces.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The word but is the great eraser.
The great eraser.
The moment it leaves your mouth, everything you said before it ceases to exist in the other person's mind. You've shifted entirely out of empathy and straight back into defensiveness. And defensiveness is the death of resolution.
Because we just want to explain our intentions, right? We think if they just understood why I did it, they wouldn't be mad anymore.
But intentions do not matter
Yeah.
in the heat of a conflict. They just don't.
Yeah.
When someone is angry with you, their primary burning desire is simply to be understood, to know that their pain makes sense to you.
Yeah.
When you say but, you are communicating that your excuse matters more than their pain.
So the guide gives us a highly effective countermove to avoid this trap. They call it the mirroring technique. The goal is to just repeat their feelings back to them. You don't have to agree with their version of events.
No, not at all.
And you certainly don't argue with it. You simply validate their emotional reality. And the language chunk for this requires strict discipline. You make steady eye contact, you nod slowly, and you say, I hear what you were saying, and then, crucially, you close your mouth.
The silence after that phrase is where the actual magic happens. You have to resist the overwhelming urge to add the but. I hear what you're saying, full stop.
Just let it hang there.
Exactly. That simple acknowledgement drains the aggression right out of the room. An angry person is shouting because they feel they aren't being heard. Once you clearly demonstrate that they are heard, the psychological need to shout evaporates.
Which completely changes the dynamic. It means you are controlling your own ego. But what if the scenario is entirely different? What if they aren't shouting at all? Because the guide also tackles the silent treatment or passive aggressiveness.
Right.
You know the exact scenario. They are clearly furious. They're slamming kitchen cabinets, giving one-word answers. But when you ask what's wrong, they say, I'm fine.
The loudest, most suffocating silence in the world.
Yes, it really is. The guide suggests a specific phrase for this scenario. Key chunk number 4. Tell me why that upset you.
Tell me why that upset you.
Now, stepping into that cold, passive-aggressive energy is incredibly intimidating. Our instinct is usually to flee. Why is looking at a silently angry person and saying, tell me why that upset you, considered a sign of massive emotional security?
Because the natural human instinct, when faced with the silent treatment is to retreat. We want to escape the discomfort. Or worse, we match their withdrawal with our own.
Yeah, we think, fine, if you're going to ignore me, I'll just ignore you harder.
Exactly. It becomes an emotional standoff.
A race to the bottom.
Precisely. But when you look at them, refuse to play the game, and calmly say, "Tell me why that upset you," you are issuing a direct invitation for vulnerability.
Wow.
You are deliberately stepping into the fire. It communicates a profound level of strength. You are establishing yourself as a grounded, safe presence. You are essentially telling them, "I'm not afraid of your anger, and I am strong enough to handle it." You don't need to hide behind slamming doors.
It's so disarming.
It is an incredibly attractive, high-value trait because it provides an anchor when they feel emotionally chaotic.
You become the anchor in the storm. And once you validate that emotion, whether it was shouting or silence, you finally de-escalate the tension. Logic can return to the room, but the conflict still isn't over.
No, we're just getting started on the resolution.
Right. To truly resolve it and get the car safely back onto dry pavement, accountability has to happen. The climax of the argument is the apology.
And this is where the real test of character happens. Because most people do not actually apologize. They deploy PR statements disguised as apologies.
Oh, the fake apology. We hear these all the time from politicians, right? But we use them in our living rooms and boardrooms too. Phrases like, "I'm sorry you feel that way," or "I'm sorry if I offended you." On the surface, if you are translating them directly into a second language, they sound perfectly polite.
They sound polite, but functionally they are weapons. They are deeply manipulative. Yes. When you say, "I'm sorry you feel that way," you aren't taking ownership of your actions. You are putting the blame entirely onto their emotional reaction. You are essentially saying, "My actions were fine. It is just a shame that your emotions are so fragile."
Oh, wow. Put like that, it is deeply insulting.
It is.
The solution, according to the guide, is absolute accountability. A high-value person completely owns their mistakes. No caveats, no excuses. If you realize you genuinely messed up, you use key chunk number 5, you look them in the eye and you say, "That was my fault. I own that."
That was my fault. I own that. It is so incredibly clean.
Yeah.
There is no wiggle room, no hidden defensiveness.
Wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Go for it.
Taking 100% of the blame sounds great in a romantic relationship. But what if we are talking about a professional environment? If I look at my boss or a client during a major dispute and say, "That was entirely my fault, I own that, I might get fired or sued," isn't this terrible, or at least highly risky, advice for a workplace conflict?
That is a completely fair concern. And it highlights a crucial distinction in how we apply this framework. In a corporate setting, absolute accountability does not mean taking the fall for a massive team failure or accepting liability for something you didn't do.
Okay, so what does it mean then?
It means taking absolute accountability for your specific piece of the puzzle without deflecting. If you missed a deadline because another department was late, the low-value response is pointing fingers.
Right, throwing them under the bus.
Exactly. The high-value response is saying, "I own the fact that I didn't communicate the delay to you sooner." You are owning your specific action.
Ah, I see. You are isolating your mistake and taking the hit for that specific part, but still it feels counterintuitive in our culture. We are taught to defend ourselves, to protect our pride at all costs. Why does completely dropping your ego and taking that blame actually make someone look more confident?
If we connect this back to human psychology, you have to understand where defensiveness comes from. Defensiveness always stems from insecurity. Always. We defend ourselves vigorously because we feel weak. And we are terrified that admitting a flaw makes us unlovable or professionally incompetent. We are desperately protecting a fragile ego.
So fighting back is actually a sign of weakness.
Exactly. When you drop your ego entirely, when you say, "That was my fault, I own that," you are demonstrating true, deep-rooted security. You are showing that your self-worth is so solid that you could admit a flaw without crumbling. It is the ultimate display of confidence.
That is powerful.
And dynamically, the moment you take 100% responsibility for your part, the fight instantly ends.
Because there is nothing left to push against. The tug of war is over because you just dropped the rope.
You drop the rope, and now that the tension is gone, the final step is rebuilding. Which brings us to the final language chunk in the guide, the ultimate closer for any argument. Right after you apologize, you ask, "How do we fix this?"
How do we fix this? It is such a massive structural shift. It physically moves the energy of the entire conversation.
It really does.
You've just spent the last 20 minutes stuck in the past, arguing about who did what, who said what, and why. This phrase grabs the steering wheel, and points the car directly into the future.
And notice how it brings the entire guide full circle. It reinforces the very first thing we talked about, the same team framework. How do we fix this? It is an invitation to collaborate. You are no longer adversaries unpacking past grievances. You are partners designing a future solution together.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? It means we need to redefine what a healthy relationship looks like, whether it's at home or at the office. A perfect relationship isn't one without fights. It is one where both people feel safe enough to fight fairly.
Exactly.
And you now have the exact blueprint to do that, even in a second language. You have the circuit breakers, like we are on the same team. You have the physiological reset of let's take a breath. You have the mirroring tools to avoid the dynamite of the word but. And you have the high-value accountability to own your mistakes and pivot to the future.
And there is a fascinating detail near the end of the source material that really drives home why this matters. The guide notes that when you navigate this process correctly, when you validate, when you drop the ego, and when you apologize properly, the emotional connection and the intimacy that follows is usually the strongest you will ever experience.
The famous makeup dynamic.
Right.
Surviving the storm together creates a unique kind of trust. You realize the relationship is strong enough to handle the truth.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder today. We just discussed how navigating a conflict properly requires immense vulnerability, and how doing it successfully creates an unprecedented level of connection. But think about the context of doing this in a second language. Usually we view a language barrier as a severe handicap.
A huge disadvantage.
Right. But if arguing in a second language strips away our ability to use complex, manipulative vocabulary and forces us to rely on simple, vulnerable truths, is it possible that a language barrier is actually a hidden advantage? Does lacking the vocabulary to talk in circles actually force us to be more honest and direct with the people we care about?
Wow. That completely flips the script on how we view communication barriers. The next time you feel the car hit the ice, don't panic. You know how to steer now. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.